Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am actually back. I am back here for a video that I know a lot of you are excited for and have been asking for. The weekly reviews for the major regions are back. If you did not watch my update video that I put out a couple of days ago, I am going to be back. I'm getting a lot more help on the graphic making and the visual part of these videos, which gives me more time and enough time to still watch all these games and take notes and make sure that I give the best content that I can for you guys. So, of course, if you are excited for this, please let me know down in the comment section below. And of course, you know, I'm not going to ask you before the video, but if you do find yourself at any point in the video enjoying the content that's in front of you, leaving a like does, of course, let me know that this is content that you guys are excited to see back and that you are excited to see. Obviously, the more feedback I get, the better. And your comments was a big reason why I wanted to come back in the first place. So, yeah, I don't want to waste too much time on this intro. This is going to be the LEC Week 2 recap. Like I said in my update video, I'm not going to be going back and doing Week 1 recaps for this region, the LCS, you know, the LCK, LPL, the first couple of weeks. I'm just going to kind of be picking up essentially where we are. And that means it's Thursday, and so it is an LEC video day. And Week 2 just happened, so we're going to be going over Week 2. Quickly, before we do that, though, up on the screen now, you are going to be seeing my power rankings that I would have had at the beginning of Summer Split. So I do, of course, keep track of stuff, even if I'm not making these videos. These would have been my power rankings at the beginning. I'm not going to talk about them too much, mostly because I'm going to be getting into a lot of the teams, well, all of the teams, throughout this video. So you'll kind of get an idea of where I think the team has improved and where I think they didn't throughout the video. I don't think I need to make a whole video for that. But the one thing I will say about this is, yes, I know my biggest toxic trait as an analyst is that I just cannot give up this Fnatic roster. I truly believe that they are good, and I hope one day that they will prove me right. But on the right, you are going to see my updated power rankings after Week 1, which, of course, have changed a little bit. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into our first game of Week 2 action. We had 10 games to go over on the docket here. The first one, of course, being SK Gaming taking on Astralis. SK not changed at all from spring. Astralis changed a lot from spring, and it really does show here them picking up a pretty big win to go 3-1. They've actually started really, really well here, and you'll notice on the screen that the graphics do look a little bit different. I think this is quite an upgrade. They're going to look a little bit different for the Eastern regions because they have best of threes. But for the Western ones, we're going to get to see bans here. If you guys like the new graphic, let me know down in the comment section below. I think it's much, much better, much cleaner, and much easier to look at. But let me know what you guys think of that down in the comment section. But let's go ahead and talk about the game here. Astralis essentially had control from minute 1. They look actually like a pretty darn good team. The remaining members from last split, obviously Dior and Kabe, are good. I wouldn't say they're great. They're probably the 3 least important members of this team so far this year, because Junghoon coming in, I had some hype for him. I watched some stuff before the split. I didn't really know much about him, as I think most people didn't. But coming in, he's actually really, really good, and someone that is probably the best player on the team from day one. Obviously, Chachi's been really, really good, you know, down in EU Masters for a little while, and then Xerxes coming back over from North America, where he was all right. He was really good last year, and he had a rough spring, looking to bounce back here in summer. But this Astralis team is honestly off to a really hot start. They haven't beaten a lot of great teams, but they're still performing, and I think that says a lot. Junghoon is going to be my player of the game here on the Rakan. Xayah Rakan, I think, is a pretty underrated duo in the meta right now. I think Xayah is playable. I don't think she's particularly amazing. I don't think Rakan is as good as people think he is, but we'll get to that maybe a little bit later. As for SK, this team is just meh. They don't make any changes from spring to summer, when the spring was not good, kind of a disaster. And obviously making no changes, this team just doesn't inspire me with any sort of confidence. As you saw from my preseason power rankings, I had them dead last. I have them as the worst roster in the LEC. I don't think there has been a ton that has happened that's really going to change my mind. I mean, them and BDS are really making a run for it, although we'll get to BDS later in the week. They didn't have a very good Week 1, but, you know, there's a chance they bounce back here in Week 2. No spoilers. Gilius especially has been pretty awful at the start of this year. He was really bad in week 1, and he was not good in week 2 either. Spoiler alert. He is my dud of the game here on the Trundle. Just doesn't get anything done, is really the problem I'm having with Gilius, is it feels like he's getting out-jungled early and then just becoming really, really passive for the rest of the game. This was a pretty quick and easy win for Astralis. Not really too much to bank on. For them, I think it's a good outlook. Hopefully they can build on this and can continue their winning ways, because for a team that's kind of been memed as the team that doesn't really put in a lot of effort in terms of roster construction, they really did go out at the beginning of summer and do their best to field the best possible team that they could. And I actually think it's going to be a huge improvement. Are they a playoff team? It's a really tough ask. The top 6 in the LEC are really, really tough to break into. They're really, really locked almost. So are they there? I don't know, but they're probably the best team outside of that top 6 or so. They're probably the best out. If any of those lower teams have a chance to break through and kind of upset, I think Astralis might have the best shot at that, especially if the team keeps playing like this. And if Junghoon is playing like this, he might get some all-pro votes. He really has been that good. As for SK, again, not super thrilled about this. Certus had a good game on the Corki, but at the end of the day, you can only do so much. When you pick the Kayle in the top lane, that pick has to do work, and Genx just hasn't been good all year. So I don't have a ton of outlook for SK, but good on Astralis for being able to pick up the win here. Moving on to the second game here of day 1 of week 2. We actually had 2 games, really, if you want to look at it that way. We had Excel taking on Team Vitality, and Excel win not only in game 1, but in game 2 as well. We get the crazy long remake delay. This was insufferable to watch, but luckily, we got some good game out of it at the very least. Excel looking really strong to start the year. I'm probably the biggest Excel supporter over the past 3 or so years in terms of thinking that this team is better than they actually are and saying that they really are one piece away. That Marcoon and Patrick are phenomenal players that can be on a top LEC team. But I did not expect them to get this good with Mickey X. This is one of the top teams in Europe, a real shot to go to Worlds, and they really do beat up Vitality here today. Nukeduck's going to be my player of the game here. Golly, man, he played really well, and he's actually had a really good last couple of months. The end of Spring Split, the beginning of Summer Split, Nukeduck's been phenomenal, and this is a guy who I was pretty out on at the beginning of last year as someone who was just like, man, I really think that mid lane position was the position that they needed to upgrade the most. Top lane was a question mark for me as well, but mid lane was something I wasn't particularly comfortable with, and he comes into a big match like this against a good Vitality team. I know, blah, 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 Vitality is kind of a shell of what we thought they would be right now, but he comes in against a good Vitality team, and he beats them. And he looks really good doing so. Obviously, Marcoon and Patrick and Mickey and Finn as well. I don't want to take away from Finn. They all had good games here, and Excel was able to pull out the win. As for Vitality, this team just doesn't click. There's really no other explanation for this. I think we may have overrated the talent level of some of the players on this team a bit. Haru coming in, I'll talk about it a little bit. I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade just yet. Selfmade did not click with this team. There really is no denying that, and Haru looks to be playing a little bit better. He's certainly more resource heavy than I think Selfmade was last split. And it's not that Selfmade's a low resource player, just that I think the game plan really has been to play around a very strong jungle position right now, and Haru on the Wukong definitely did that this game, but he doesn't have a lot of support here. The solo laners were both pretty bad in this one. Both Alfari and Perks had bad games. You can really give it a toss-up as to who to give the dud of the game to. I'm going to give it to Alfari just because I thought he had zero impact, but Perks with that absolute whiff of the Shuriman Shuffle, I mean, that play alone, you could argue, gives him the dud of the game. I just think Alfari had a little bit less of an impact overall. But whichever one you wanted to give that to, I think is totally fine. Carzzy didn't have a great one either. This Vitality team just, it doesn't have it. I don't know what the problem is. I can't really spot it. Because it's not that we haven't seen these players do well before. It's just they're not good. Alfari has been, I think inarguably not good on this team. He has reverted to anything before he was even remotely playable, before Origin, before all of that, right? This is the worst version of Alfari I can remember seeing. Perks is so inconsistent. He'll have really good games. He had some really good ones in week 1. And then he'll have games like this where it's just like mechanical mistakes, question marks. I don't really get it. And then obviously you have a pretty big question mark in the bot lane. Carzzy and Labrov did not have a good spring. And they don't seem to be having a great start to summer either. Not that they've been awful, just not on the same level of what you would expect out of a bot lane that was pretty hyped up to be one of the better ones in Europe at the beginning of the year. They're just not that. But, you know, instead of talking about what Vitality isn't, I mean, Excel is just great. This is a team that I think really does have genuine Worlds expectations, and I think that it is completely attainable for them, which is crazy to say. I would not have said that at the beginning of the year when they still had Adviena at support, and they were looking like a lost team. You bring in Finn from CLG, and you're like, oh god, he was maybe the worst player in LCS last year. He definitely turns it around here in the LEC. He's playing a lot better. Marcoon and Patrick have definitely taken that step up. Well, Patrick maybe not. Patrick was probably already there. We knew how good he was. He just finally has a team around him that's able to play. And then Nuke Duck has really returned to the form that we saw out of him in 2018 when we were considering him one of the up-and-coming, like, really great mid laners. Not up-and-coming. He's been around forever. But just like, wow, this guy's secretly really good, right? I called him the Jensen of EU at the time. And I think that comparison, you know, over time has looked a little weird, but maybe he can get back to that this year is kind of what we're hoping. He has a really good game on the Ahri. Obviously, he forces the remake, so maybe it's maybe, you know, screw him for making me watch 3 hours of nothing. But also, he played really well in the game, so it's hard for me to care. But yeah, Excel looking really good. Vitality has major question marks. If this team, the crazy part is they might not even be a playoff team. But we'll have to wait and see because this really was a dismantling from an Excel team. Moving on to the third game here of week 2, we had the 0-3 Misfits gaming team taking on the surprising 1-2 Rogue team here. Rogue had a really rough week 1. Not in terms of how they played. I mean, yes, how they played, but they had a rough schedule. Played a lot of the top teams there. Misfits, not so much. Misfits kind of just looking real bad. Let's get to Rogue. Shout out to Omne, hooray! After the 0-11 week 1, he bounces back here with a pretty phenomenal Gangplank game. This is how you take over the game late, pretty much allowing absolutely nothing to happen. Like, the other team doesn't really have a ton of options. Not that they were really trying, which I'll get to later, but it's just really good to see Odo back after a really, really rough week 1 here. But everybody on the team played well. I thought Comp on the Senna, I think that's one of his better picks. I hope to see it more. Senna Seraphine, I think, is such a strong lane right now that I expect to see that a lot more across pretty much all the major regions. Obviously, if you can get the Wukong Ahri mid-jungle, that is arguably the best mid-jungle duo in the game right now. Just a really strong draft here from Rogue in general. They kind of get everything they want, and they're able to execute it on it pretty well. But the team that isn't able to execute is Misfits. Everybody here knows how much of a fan of VTO I am. I talked about it a lot in spring about just, God, he's so good, and if he had players around him, like, he could be a Worlds semifinal, Worlds final kind of player. He hasn't shown that at the beginning of summer. He had a really rough week 1. This 0-3, you know, I want to say it was like VTO versus the world, but he didn't play that well in week 1. He did have a pretty good game here. The Corky Rockets were flying, and they were doing damage, but man, he is playing with 4 noodles around him sometimes. And I don't mean that in terms of, like, these players are just awful in general, but just, God, the decision-making on this team is have they ever played before? Like, I don't know. I don't know if they've played together. Like, they have no cohesion. There's no shot calling. Cadril screaming at Mursa to ward the Baron is an encapsulation, I think, of what the problem with this team is, which is that the macro part of the game is just nonsensical to them. And I don't know where that comes from. 4 of these players were a playoff team last year, like an actual genuine playoff team last split. And you just change out top laners, which was your weakest role. And your bot lane at the start of this split has been unplayable. Neon and Mursa have been awful. There's really no other way to talk about it. You could give either of them the dud of the game here. I'm going to give it to Neon because how do you go 0-6-1 on Ezreal? Like, at the very least, you should be hitting Qs and you should be safe with E. But man, like, this was just bad. It was just bad. There's really no explanation for why Misfits is this bad. You need a pretty huge turnaround. This is the worst form I've seen this team in quite a long time. VTO needs to get back to being the MVP that he was in spring, and Rogue, capitalized on that. Odo with the great bounce back game and Rogue looking a lot closer to what they did in spring. They also have an uphill battle to be a Worlds team, which is weird to say because they were the best team in the regular season last year and they made finals. But God, there's so many good teams in the LEC. Like the top half of the LEC is just so strong that like if you wanted to put Rogue at 4th, I'd believe you. But if you wanted to put Rogue at 2nd, I'd also believe you. I really think that there is a lot of things that can happen at the top of this standing chart by the end of the year. And hopefully for Rogue, they are on top of that. I think if they just continue to play their game, which is something that they have shown that they are good at, which is just controlling tempo and securing objectives late game, not giving the enemy team an opportunity, having good early games centered around Malrang, I think that they'll be just fine. But, you know, last week they weren't able to accomplish that against some of the best teams. Obviously, dismantling a very weak Misfits team is a different story, but hopefully this gives them the confidence to kind of get back to that form that we expected of them. As for Misfits, I just hope they turned around. I don't have very much expectation for this roster after what they have shown at the beginning of the split, but if they can even get halfway to what they were in spring, like just a team that like can fight for playoffs, like is like in the conversation, I think that is kind of what you're hoping for at this point. An 0-4 start is not what you wanted, though. This is about as bad as it gets for them. Moving on to game 4 here of day 1 of week 2, we had the undefeated G2 Esports that just went to MSI and had a really good run there, 6-0 NA, etc., versus the winless, hapless, nothing Team BDS. Of course, this went to G2. Oh, never mind. Actually, this makes more sense than them winning. If I'm being completely honest, there is nothing more predictable than undefeated G2 losing to the winless team. It just has to happen. I feel like it's not only the LEC curse, but it's especially the G2 curse. This is just what they do. I'm not particularly scared for them. I don't think it's that big of a deal. We'll talk about the game, but whatever. Let's talk about BDS. This roster was not good at the beginning of the year. Aggressivu coming in. I'm actually a pretty big Aggressivu fan. I've liked him for a while. And then you bring in Airdot here at support. And sure, you know, this team needed a change. Everything that happened with Limit is brutal, and I feel really bad for him that he can't play at all. They planned to play him, you know, obviously in EU Masters, and they couldn't because veteran player limits and whatever that they just didn't know about. Bad on the organization. Hopefully he gets paid, and hopefully something works out there for him. But as for this game, rock on. Like, good for BDS. Syncroft played awesome on the Hecarim. This is a pick he's always been really good on. He was really good on it back in EU Masters on K-Corp. And he's good on it here. You know, I know it's not particularly meta, but when G2 picks a comp like this, maybe it is. This is just a really, really good game from Syncroft and Xmatty, who finally had a game in the LEC that he can be like, wow, I had a really good game. He had a really rough spring. Was maybe one of the worst players in spring. And he bounced back here pretty well. He's had a decent start to the year, even with the team being kind of bad. He hasn't been perfect, but he hasn't been like the hugest problem. Syncroft had, you know, he is his up and downs as well. I thought he was kind of the shining light of this team in spring, and he looked really good in this one. Just out jungled Yankos. Not entirely Syncroft, but mostly Syncroft. As for G2, like, I don't know. How do I judge this? Caps and Targamas played really well on Ari and Nami. Everybody else seemed kind of bleh. Yankos played really bad, but he also picked Vi into Hecarim Lissandra. And it's like, okay, well, you're not going to play the game. So how much of that is Yankos and how much of that is just like, how do you pick Vi in this spot? Like, you can't. That is inexcusable. Caps running it down at the end there. Just a weird game from G2. They weren't the better team pretty much at any point in this game, in my opinion. And, yeah, I mean, shout out to BDS for taking the win. I don't think this necessarily says a lot about either team. I am not going to take this as maybe G2's not as good as we think, or maybe BDS is better than we think. This happens every split. One of these games, the worst team just beats the best team. It's just going to happen. And so I'm not going to try to read into it too much. Honestly, you're going to see a lot of reactionary stuff out this week about this game. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not going to overreact. G2 is still probably the best team in Europe. BDS is still one of the worst teams in Europe. I don't think this changes much, although it does raise some questions of, like, why don't they take games like this seriously? But, you know, when it comes to crunch time, I'm not super worried that G2 is going to be able to step up. So, overall, a really good win for BDS. Like, they've got to be really happy with it, but not something that I really think affects the outlook of these two teams very much going forward. That brings us to our final game here of day one for week 2, and that was Fnatic taking on the Mad Lions. Mad Lions actually picking up a pretty big victory here over a Fnatic team that, like I said in the intro, I just can't seem to quit. I expect this team to turn it around eventually, and man, the macro just does not get better, does it? They have some pretty huge problems, so let's talk about Mad. Their problems are not macro. They actually have phenomenal macro. I would argue they have some of the most cohesive macro in the LEC, maybe behind G2 at their best, and then Excel has shown some really good ones too, but Mad Lions just look really cohesive. Adding Nisqy is like the missing piece for this team. He has been like quietly an MVP candidate to start this year. Maybe not quietly. People are talking about him. He's just not, you know, this big playmaker type. He's just facilitating this team to do whatever the hell it wants. And that's what they're doing. They do whatever the hell they want on the map, and they get away with it. And it's incredible to watch. It is fun League of Legends that Mad Lions is playing right now, and I think a lot of that has been unlocked by their new mid laner. He, of course, is going to get the player of the game here on a pick that I think is relatively weak right now in Twisted Fate. Really, he's just there for the global and the stun. The damage coming out of TF is fine. It's negligible, though, especially in comparison to someone like Ahri in that matchup. That should be very difficult in the 1v1, and it just wasn't for Nisqy. Nisqy had full map control, was never really pressured out of lane. No problems at all for Nisqy, and that's kind of been the story of the year so far. Everybody else on this Mad Lions team is playing really well. Unforgiven picking up right where he left off, having a really, really good start to the year. Him and Kaiser have a phenomenal synergy together. You could argue that Unforgiven is better for this team than what Carzzy was a couple of years ago, or a year ago. Because Carzzy wasn't that, like, I'm going to win the game player. Unforgiven is that. He is, like, the carry on this team. And when you have a supportive mid laner here like Nisqy, it really unlocks Unforgiven to just kind of be the hyper carry here. Kaiser plays his role really well here. Of course, I hate to see Yuumi, but he does his job. And Elyoya and Armut are both really solid. Armut's been kind of questionable over the year so far, but Elyoya's had a pretty good one. And this Mad Lions team is looking scary. I don't know how scary just yet. I really want to see them go up against a team like Excel or a team like G2 to really see what this team is made of and how their macro can hold up in that case. But they're doing a good job of taking advantages of the small weaknesses that these other teams give them. The small windows, I should say, that these other teams give them. Speaking of windows, giving other team windows to win, Fnatic, they have so much talent. There is really no denying it. Like, even in lane, like, these guys are just super good, but their macro's not there. It's kind of similar to what we were talking about with Vitality, but I think they're a little bit better than Vitality. They don't seem to have it, right? Whatever it is together, they seem lost. They don't know how to trade. They don't know how to pressure. It just seems like they are 5 solo queue players that are trying their best. And that is not a recipe for success, especially in a league like the LEC. So you can see what happens there is there are multiple times in this game where it's like, oh, they're getting Dragon, you should trade Rift Herald. And they just don't. They just don't go after the objective. They don't realize the timings. They don't realize things. They don't think about these things, it almost seems like. And I don't know where that comes from. This was a huge problem for them in spring, too. It's the reason they didn't make the finals. Humanoid continuing to be a big question mark for this team. He's going to be my dud of the game. He was so good in the regular season in spring. And his question marks just come out when the games are big. And they have since he was younger, too. I can go back to the Splice Mad Lions days, right? Of, like, this guy, he is so mechanically talented, and then he'll make a play where it's like, why? Why would you do that? Again, I've talked about this. I do believe in this team to turn it around, but they are going to have to turn it around because it is not there right now. Wonder with a rough start to the year as well. Really, the only saving, like, grace is I still think that Upset and Hylissang are phenomenal. And they're, between them and, like, Mickey and and Patrick, like, you can take your pick as to which is the better bot lane in the LEC right now. And even Flocket and Targamas, although I think that they are a distant third. At least they've got Upset and Hillisang. I still think they're good. They didn't really have a chance to take over this game, but, you know, I still think that they're playing really well. It's just about that top side of the map. They've got to figure it out. Whatever it is, the macro decisions making them at all. Whoever's shot calling just needs to make a decision. They need to commit to something, because right now they are just wandering around until they lose. But Mad is the opposite. Mad is having a phenomenal start to the year off of the back of their great shot calling. They really could be a contender for top 3. That would be ideal for them, obviously. I want to see them do it against a team that we know is cohesive and put together. But until then, until we see it, like, I have to believe that there at least is a chance that they are up in that top echelon with the rest of the best teams in the world. That means we can go ahead and jump into day 2 here of week 2. That was kicked off with a Battle of the Least, or at least what looked like it at the beginning of this day. Misfits Gaming taking on SK Gaming. Misfits finally scoring their first win of the season. Good for them. Finally, they showed up. Yes, it was against a bad team, but they did. They showed up. Like, this was a good-looking Misfits team. They attacked. They were aggressive. And they showed a lot of macro knowledge in this one that they just were not showing at the beginning of the year. VTO finally comes out with that game we've been waiting for here on the Ahri. He's going to be my player of the game here. He was kind of the big offensive threat. Although you could very well give this to Mursa. He had a phenomenal game on the Renata, and bot lane was an absolute nightmare for SK Gaming, which we'll get into. But just a really solid game here for Misfits from top to bottom. Schlatan on the Wukong, that's a good pick. Obviously, Wukong is good in general right now. Arguably the best pick in the world right now. Like, the best champion in the game. But still, to see that you're able to pilot it like this is really good. To have the knowledge that, oh, we can just, like, destroy bot lane, even with Viego there, and just do it over and over and over again. Like, it shows a lot of good forward thinking here from Misfits that we just weren't seeing in the first 4 games that they had this year. Neon and Mursa destroyed that bot lane, like I said, obviously with help, but really just continuously dove. Like, the Renata pick is absolutely devastating if you get ahead, and so is Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa's really good from ahead, and the Ezreal Rakan lane is just not super punishing for, like, overdives, and golly, when your jungler plays like this, it's kind of hard to win. But yeah, Misfits with a really solid game here. Really not a lot to talk about that they did wrong. They were just the better team here on pretty much every level, and all of the players on the team kind of contributed in a meaningful, positive way to an important win for this team. As for SK, yeah, they're bad. They're not good. There's really not a lot to say about that. Gilius is going to be my dud of the game again here. What an awful performance here from SK in general. Gilius continuously getting dove under tower as Viego is about as tragic as it can get. Just absolutely nothing going for this team. Gilius is back to beginning of season form. Maybe we get God Gilius at some point in the last 3 games when it doesn't matter anymore again, because that's how it tends to work. But I don't know. This is the worst team in the LEC. I'll say it. Like, we're going to get to the power rankings later. You can say what you want about BDS. You can say what you want about this Misfits team. Clearly, you can't say it in comparison to them. But, like, this is the worst team in the LEC. SK has no fight in them. They just seem to sit there and lose. Genax is nothing in the top lane. He's a player that I've liked in the past. But, like, in this game, like, what did he do? Like, he, like, name something in this game that he did. Jezu couldn't do anything at all in this game. He was continuously pressured under tower. Treats and Gilius were running it. Certus on the Lissandra has a super winning matchup into the Ahri and just can't do anything about it. This is a Lissandra pick that I'll talk about in future videos because I think it'll be more relevant in different regions, but it's a Lissandra pick that I am super duper in on right now across the world. I love Lissandra in the meta right now, and this was a pick that just got obliterated as well. SK just doesn't have it. But as for Misfits, you really, really like to see them confidently and assertively win this game, because this was a team that was really starting to worry you if you were a fan, because they were not the team that showed up in spring, even with one change, and that one change wasn't even seemingly the biggest problem. So to see them kind of get back on track here, bot lane finally playing a really good game after having an awful start to the year, VTO getting back on track with a really good Ahri game, Schlatan showing good map awareness and map knowledge. This is exactly what you wanted to see out of a Misfits squad that you had major concerns with the past couple games. Moving on to the second game here of day 2, we had a matchup of top of the table teams, or what we believe to be top of the table teams. Excel taking on the Mad Lions. I was talking about earlier in this episode how I wanted the Mad Lions to play one of these top teams so that we could see if their macro could hold up. The answer, I don't think you want me to answer that. They didn't look so good in this one. Pretty much all of their decisions were not good in this one. Let's talk about Excel, and let's talk about the return. The return of the king. It's happened. The weak side king is back. Finn has returned to the LEC to claim his throne from, Odoamne? I don't know. Who's the other weak side king? God, what a good game from Finn. He was ganked maybe 46 times in the first 15 minutes, and died to none of them. Couldn't even be hit by a Q if he tried. Part of that was Elyoya, but let's give Finn the credit he deserves. He had a phenomenal game here on the Gnar. This is what it looks like to absorb pressure and to let your team essentially do whatever they want, which Marcoon and Patrick did. And Nuke Duck. I don't want to forget Nuke Duck. That's what they did. They did whatever they wanted. Kind of what Mad was doing earlier in the week. They just did whatever they wanted. There was so much pressure up his way in the top lane, and none of it mattered. None of it mattered. Marcoon with a phenomenal Volibear game. The Year of the Duck is in session here with Nuke Duck. Patrick and Mickey are probably the best bot lane in Europe right now. Both, you could argue, I think, are the best players in their role. I think both have an argument to be the best players in their role. It's so good finally to see Patrick on a team that really can play around him and support him and put him up where he should be. I have been the biggest Patrick fan. You can go back on this channel. I've been the biggest Patrick fan in the world for like 3+ years, and I feel like I'm finally being vindicated with this team. You put him with the support like Mickey, and like boom, like best bot lane in Europe pretty much immediately. It's awesome. It's really great to see. This Excel team is just clicking on all cylinders. They could be the best team in Europe. Like, they really are that good. You would never look on paper and see this roster and say that they are the best team in Europe, but they play like it. They play like a cohesive unit that knows exactly how to take advantage of everything that the enemy gives them, while also being really proactive in their own right. Like, just because Finn's absorbing pressure top lane doesn't mean Marcoon is not creating pressure everywhere else on the map. So I really like what this Excel team is doing. Mad Lions, this was not so good. Obviously, this we were hyping them up earlier in the episode. This one, not so good. Kind of a complete demolition. There's really no other way to put it. Elyoya had a stinker of a game, and he's going to get my dud of the game here. I don't think I said it, but Finn was my player of the game, obviously. Elyoya is going to get my dud of the game. I don't think he hit a Lee Sin Q. Like, I know we hear about Yankos and his Nidalee spears, but, like, this was not good. I know Elyoya can play Lee Sin. This was just one of those games where nothing was going right. He tried to gank top, like, 17 times, failed all of them, and then Unforgiven, by that point, was just so far behind because Volibear was in his lane 24/7. There's really not much you can do here. Niski's never going to get anything ahead on the Sylas. He's going to be more of a support player for the Zeri, for the Gwen, for the Lee Sin. Really wasn't much to do in that case. Mad just never had it. They took some risks early in the game and they didn't pay off. And by the point that they didn't pay off, they were so far behind that there was really no coming back. I don't think that this game is like proof that Mad Lions is super overrated and that they're not the top team that we think they are. I definitely think this more shows how good Excel is, and that Mad maybe plays a little bit more risky and more punishable than we gave them credit for, because they are taking these risks on these plays on if they don't work, like, they're going to get punished, which is what happened in this game. The bot lane never had a chance. Never had a chance in the world. And, good on Excel, bad on Mad. Really not too much else to talk about. I don't think this is, like I said, entirely indicative of Mad skill. Ideally, though, honestly, this really could be indicative of Excel skill. They really could be this good. They look like maybe the top team in the region right now. At the very least, I think one of the top 2 teams in the region right now, which is incredible to say for a team that, going into the year, many people didn't even know if they would make playoffs. Obviously, the addition of Mickey X helps a lot, but just generally, everybody on this team has started to step up. What a great turnaround story, and I'm super hopeful for this Excel team. Moving on to our third game here of day 2, we had Rogue taking on Astralis in a decent game. Honestly, a game that was a lot closer in-game than it probably should have been with the drafts that happened, but Rogue does take the win here in 36 minutes. This was expected. Obviously, Rogue is the better team. Even though Astralis is, kind of started out hot, I still don't think they have the talent to really compete with a team like Rogue, who is one of the better teams in Europe. Let's not forget that. And they played like it in this one. Rogue was awesome. There's really not much else to say. This comp is disgusting. I absolutely hate it. Wukong, Senna, Seraphine with an Azir scaling, it's disgusting. I hate this. I hope it's never played again, but also salute to Rogue for having the balls to play this, because it's just, you get to a point in the game where it's like, oh my god, I have 75 anti-heal items and none of it matters. None of it matters because I'm at full health all game long. So, youch. I don't know if they lost any health bars this game. It was just really well played generally. Comp and Trimby are a really solid bot lane. I didn't put them in that best bot lane category. They're kind of right on the outskirts there. They're really good. I just don't know if they're top tier. Larson with a phenomenal game here on the Azir. He was really the one that was given the keys. I'm not sure if he was necessarily the driver, but he was the one that looked like they were driving, This Senna Soraka really kind of combo was really the MVP of the game, but Azir was the carry, and so we're going to give it to Larson as the player of the game here. He was really solid. I don't want to take that away from him. This team, when they click, just looks really disgusting. They have amazing draft gaps, just every once in a while. They're just man, they just get it. One of the best coach teams in the league. We've known that for years. Rogue has always kind of had that reputation, but just another example of that this year. They continue to be one step ahead of, I think, almost every other team in the LEC when it comes to off-meta weird stuff that is just going to win them games, which is really what it's about. As for Astralis, a tough loss here. This comp is pretty doomed. You're relying almost entirely on the Yone to carry. Seraphine's not even building AP as your AP carry in the bot lane, building full support and just kind of hoping that Yone is able to win you the game. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. He did not have a good game. Yone, and also in the comments, if you're gonna scream at me if I say Yone or Yone, sorry. I go back and forth. I think it's Yone, but I've said Yone my entire, ever since he came out. And so I just default to that. I apologize if that bothers some people, but I'll try my best to say Yone. Yone was fine. He really wasn't. Dior was pretty bad this game. He's giving me my dud of the game. Lilia building full damage is kind of suspect here. I think it's fine, especially with the early gold, but I don't know. I would just rather that be on Seraphine. I feel like she can do so much more with that, productivity, right? If you want that AP carry, I feel like it's just so much better to have it there, but you want that support for Yone. I get it. Junghoon actually played this game pretty well. He's really good on Pyke. This is something that I have learned about him, is that his Pyke is nasty, and you wouldn't think of Seraphine Pyke as a traditionally dangerous lane duo, but I think Junghoon plays it really well, and I think with a better team around him, this would have been a really dangerous game. He does really well into Soraka, because he can just execute her. If she overheals people and just goes too low herself, he can just kill her, and then the healing's gone. And I think that's a very valuable resource to have. But unfortunately, they just had no carry. Yone, was so far behind at that point, it didn't matter. And Lilia was your other carry, and Lilia's just not going to be that for an Azir. Lilia's just never going to be able to kill Azir. Chachi didn't play particularly well on the Ornn, just the ults or whatever. It's meh. Astralis didn't look particularly great in this game, but Junghoon is really good. He's the best player on this Astralis team. He was a phenomenal pickup for them. I'm not exactly sure what scouting department found that for them, but good on them, because he really looks to be a diamond in the rough for this Astralis team, but it wasn't enough here against Rogue. Rogue played it really well, about as good as you can. They continue to draft gap teams like this throughout the rest of the year, as they've kind of shown to do in the regular season, both in spring and pretty much in all of 2021 as well. I think this team is going to be really dangerous, and it's just going to continue to kind of get their form back after a rough week one in which they had to play pretty much all of the top teams in the region. So I have a lot of faith in this Rogue team. It's not a killer for Astralis, but at the end of the day, you got to do something better than this. I'm not sure the game plan was entirely sustainable going into the game in the first place, but, whatever. You still got to play the game right, and they didn't quite do that. So congratulations to Rogue. You want to see a little more out of Astralis, although it's not the end of the world. that's going to go ahead and bring us to what is easily the game of the week here in the LEC. And I would not have expected that going into it. We have, of course, Fnatic taking on Team BDS in a game of League of Legends. That's really the best way I can put this. This was like a 2v8. I have no other way to put it. A 2v8 that, by the way, the 2-1 in Fnatic. It's insane. Upset was so freaking good this game on the Zeri. A pick that, while strong, I don't think is quite as strong as people think it is right now. But Upset really showing that you can take over the game here. The Baron steal is nuts. And then Wonder with a phenomenal game on Gragas. Those ults, especially in that last team fight, were so good. If you wanted to give player of the game to either, I would totally understand. I think both deserve it wholeheartedly. I'm going to give it to Upset because I just think Upset played really phenomenal here. And he's had a really good start to the year, quietly on a Fnatic team that just really struggles to play the game. But wow, does this Fnatic team not want to win games sometimes? This was really a contest of which team wanted to throw more. Razork tried his absolute best here on Viego. This was not a performance to remember. He's actually my dud of the game on the winning team. You'll know that I don't do this often, but I do it when they deserve it. And I thought Razork was the worst player of this game. So for me, Razork is going to get the dud of the game here on Viego. Just a non-inspiring performance. Humanoid played meh on the Corki. Hylissang had some very questionable moments on Renata. The classic Hilly experience. BDS was kind of along for the ride. Their comp is just gross. Like, I absolutely hate Kog'Maw Senna. This shouldn't be allowed. It's really good. Like, you can delete people from, like, a screen away, which feels disgusting to play against. Like, what exactly do you do against that? But their positioning isn't much better. Xmatty had a rough one. Like I said, he had a rough spring. He's had a rough summer, too. I'm just not sure. I was excited about him coming into the LEC. I thought he played really well in K-Corp last year, but I don't know if he has it. I don't know if he's LEC. Like, I don't know if he's ready right now for the LEC. I don't know if he's on that same level that you need to be to go against a player like Upset, because he just seems to be the weak link for this BDS team every single time. Aggressivu and Erdot had good games. Aggressivu actually had a really good game, I thought, on the Gnar. He was pretty impactful late game, but there's really only so much you can do against a Zeri and a Gragas that just want to 2v8. Like, there really isn't much to say about it. Upset and Wonder played a phenomenal game of League of Legends, and they deserve to win this. Razork, Humanoid, and Hylissang, not that they didn't deserve to win, but just, like, definitely question marks about their performance. But talking about the outlook of the team, does this make me feel better about Fnatic? A little. I mean, Upset continues to play really well. And Wonder, he has these games that are bad, but for the most part, he's pretty consistently good. The question marks are definitely still there for jungle mid. Razork with a rough one. Humanoid wasn't exactly a barn burner in this one either. And then Hylissang, just there are some games that he runs it. That's just what he does. You learn to live with it. But does this change the outlook for BDS? They have a pretty disgusting comp here, and I really like the draft here from Grabs. But outside of that, they just don't seem to want to execute on that very well. I'm not sure they have the talent to execute on it. They just seem to be a little bit worse in pretty much every position than almost every other team in the LEC. And there's only so much you can do with that talent gap. And that's, I hate to say that because I do think these players can improve. And a lot of these guys have shown things in the past. I think Syncroft is a good player. I do like Aggressivu, but Xmatty has not shown much. Nuclear Int really hasn't shown almost anything since the Schalke days. Just kind of major question marks with BDS in terms of the players. But, good on Fnatic. They're going to be happy that they got the win here, but it's not exactly the most confidence-inspiring win. Definitely fun for the fans, though. Game of the week, for sure. That's going to bring us to our final game here of Week 2. It was Team Vitality taking on G2 Esports. And G2 picks up the win in a pretty disgusting game, mostly because of the combo that we will get to, but Vitality they don't have it. We'll get to that. G2 looks good. There's really not a lot to talk about. Everybody on this team is really good, aren't they? Caps is really good, and he gets a pick that I think is super underrated. I talked about Lissandra being a pick I really like in the meta right now. Swain is another one that I just think, when you're seeing a lot of these high damage, kind of bursty mid laners like Ahri, like LeBlanc, Swain, Lissandra, these are really, really solid picks into them. They can do a lot on their own, and then they team fight especially well. I think we saw that here. Kayle Swain, like, is this going to be allowed for the rest of the year? Because holy shit, like, this was disgusting to watch. Swain can't die. Swain ults, and if he ever even gets remotely close to dying, he gets Kayle ulted. It is scary how unstoppable this felt at many points in the game. Not to say that Kayle and Swain were the only two members that mattered. Fnatic had a really good game on Yasuo. Imagine G2 picking Yasuo and then not giving it to Caps. It's pretty insane that Fnatic gets this. Broken Blade, I'm pretty sure, has a good Yasuo as well. Fnatic getting this is the ultimate sign of both respect and disrespect. And then for him to play as well as he did is pretty insane. Like, he bought GA, and I don't think he ever used it. Like, just insane from Fnatic. Him and Targamas are a really good bot lane. I don't want to disrespect them at all. Jankos had a good game. G2 is just firing on all cylinders. This is a complete team. And they're showing why they were the best team in Spring, why they won Spring, and why they were really good at MSI, quite frankly, as well. As for Vitality, the issues continue. This team has no cohesion. They have no macro. I'm not sure they're talking to one another. They just seem tilted out of their minds. That's really what it has to be, is like Alphari isn't playing well, and he looks tilted out of his mind. Karzi and Labrov are not playing well. They are, and then Perks is just not, there's no macro. Like, there's no macro on this team. They don't make decisions. They sit here and they go even and then eventually lose because they don't make any decisions. And it's you know, not inspiring. This is what NA used to get criticized a lot for, like LCS teams. We get criticized a lot for just kind of being not proactive, or just kind of waiting to lose even though they'd play well early. That's kind of what this Vitality team is. Ironic that, of course, you're bringing Alphari and Perks back from NA, and then all of a sudden they're not proactive. This is disgusting to watch. I know a lot of people were kind of hoping that Haru could come in and fix this, or that Bo would get a visa, which every day it looks less and less likely that he is actually going to get a visa by the time this split is still going. They kind of knew that going into the split, though. I don't think they really expected him to play much this year. It's the reason he didn't get an offer from an NA team, was because nobody expected him to get a visa. I don't expect him to be playing in summer, but Haru has not really been much of an improvement. He's been all right, but he's been whatever. This team is just lost. They don't have any sort of goal. They don't really have any sort of play style. They just kind of are okay players that go out there and get out macroed and outskilled over the course of 30 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, if that's what you're going to be, I don't even know if this is a playoff team. Like, they really have to show some things to show that they're better than someone like Astralis. Like, if you put, gun to my head right now, can I tell you that Vitality is a better team than Astralis? I don't know if I can commit to that. I would expect them to be. They should be on paper. They should be way better. But they just don't seem to have any sort of proactivity. Hopefully they can turn it around. Labrov is going to be my dud of the game here. He wasn't so good. Caps is going to be my player of the game here on the Swain. He was pretty much unkillable in these team fights. Just basically took over. But yeah, great win for G2. They continue their run of looking like the best team in the LEC. And Vitality, like I said, just needs to figure it out, because whatever they're doing right now is just simply not working. All right, and that is going to do it for my Week 2 LEC analysis and my comeback here to YouTube. Let me know what you guys thought of the video down in the comment section below. If, of course, you liked it, please go ahead and leave a like. It really does help me a lot. It lets me know you guys not only enjoy the content, but obviously it helps get the content out to more people. Up on your screen right now, you're going to be seeing the current LEC standings on your left. Any ties will just be broken in alphabetical order, so do not worry about that. And then on your right, you're going to see my updated power rankings with how they have changed, which in this case is almost not at all. You will see no one changed except for the bottom two spots. BDS jumping back up to 9 and SK falling back down to 10. SK is just helpless at the moment, but everybody else kind of staying put for now. There are definitely some question marks about teams like Fnatic and Vitality, but I need to see them lose to worse teams, or to teams like on the border, in order for me to really buy in. I don't want to overreact to a couple of bad weeks. They certainly can still turn it around. They have the talent to do so, and at the end of the day, I would expect them to do so. I didn't really talk about players of the week. I'll go over my Week 1 player of the week and dud of the week right now. Week 1, my player of the week was Caps on G2. He had a phenomenal week, was really the best player in Week 1. And then my dud of the week in Week 1 was actually VTO, the reigning MVP. Not a good Week 1 for VTO, so he got my Week 1 dud of the week. For Week 2, My player of the week goes to none other than the Duck himself, Nuke Duck. It is the year of the Duck. A great week 2 here from Excel's Nuke Duck. He was probably the best player in the LEC this week. He really was dominant in both of the games that they played. And then my dud of the week, no surprise, goes to Gilius on SK, who just did not have a good week at all. Definitely one to forget for him. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, if you did, please go ahead and leave a like and let me know about improvements you like or don't like down in the comment section below. Without further ado, I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.